All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Our topic is the IDEaS program for innovators. My name is Carrie Leoge, and I'm the Skills Development Manager here at Women's Enterprise Center, and I work out of our Kelowna office. And I have the pleasure of overseeing our training programs, including webinars such as this. And we're always looking to provide support and resources for the topics that you need. So please, if you ever have anything that you would like us to consider, please be sure to complete the follow-up survey that you'll receive and share your ideas. And for those of you maybe joining us for the first time, Women's Enterprise Center is a nonprofit organization devoted to helping women start, lead, and grow their business. And our full range of services includes business loans of up to $150,000 with access to an additional $100,000 through our partnership with BDC. We also provide business advice, skills training, mentoring, resources, and a supportive community to help women entrepreneurs realize their business potential. And we do all this from our 3 offices located in Kelowna, Vancouver, and Victoria. And we have also ambassadors across the province, so in some of those northern regions, the island as well. We're funded by the federal government through Western Economic Diversification, and we're part of the Women's Enterprise Initiative, including similar organizations in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Now, on to today's session. Our topic today is the IDEaS program for innovators. IDEaS stands for Innovation for Defense, Excellence, and Security. And to answer your questions and provide us a lot of information on this program, I'm very excited to have Erin Edinburgh, Project Officer with the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises, the Pacific Office, joining us today. So we're going to learn about the key elements of the program, promoting collaboration between innovators, developmental resources, and opportunities to interact with the Department of National Defense's science and military members. So welcome, Erin. I'm going to hand it over to you now, and we're going to do that pass off of sharing the screen. So I'll let you pull those up while you say hello to everybody this morning.
Terrific. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody?
We are good. I can hear you great, and we've got everybody else on chat. So yeah, if anybody wants to put any comments in chat, maybe tell us where you're joining us from or where you're joining from, that would be great. So I can hear you great, Erin.
Terrific. All right, we'll just get the session going, the slideshow going. Okay, can you see that first slide, the IDEaS slide? Is that the one that everyone can see?
Yep, that's looking great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so my name's Erin Edinburgh. I'm with the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises. We are a branch of Public Services and Procurement Canada. PSPC is basically the business arm of the federal government. Any sort of common business function that any department would need gets run through PSPC. So we're responsible for real estate and leasing and providing buildings and office space to all of our other government departments. We do some common HR and IT functions, and we also do procurement on behalf of other departments, which is really what our office is involved in. If you've seen any of our seminars before with either with Women's Enterprise Center or through our own seminars, we are out all the time talking to suppliers, talking to Canadian businesses about how to do business with the federal government. It can be a little different than your typical business-to-business relationship. And yeah, that's what our office does, is provide support through that whole journey. I'm sure my contact info will be shared throughout this presentation or afterwards by Carolee and Women's Enterprise Center. I think it's even in some of the slides towards the end. We're going to talk about a specific program today, but the sort of general lessons on how to bid on a government contract can apply to anything. If you have any questions, if anybody wants to chat about any government procurement opportunities, whether or not it's for the military through this IDEaS program, some other sort of innovation that you're looking to get into the government or looking to try and have a conversation about how to sell that to the government, outside of the military, or just our standard procurement process, look us up. Happy to chat with you. We meet with businesses one-on-one all the time. So today, what I'm really here to talk about is the IDEaS program. So IDEaS is a challenge-based procurement program through National Defense with the goal of solving our armed forces operational challenges. So the program itself was announced in Budget 2017 in the Strong, Secure, Engaged policy. So basically, they've committed $1.6 billion over the next 20 years to funnel through this program to not only solve Canadian Armed Forces operational challenges, but also to support the private innovation space in Canada. There were some interesting numbers we heard from the program around the history of innovation in Canada. Basically, coming out of World War II, so 70 years ago or whatever it is now, 85% of spending in Canada on R&D functions was being done by labs owned by the government. That situation is completely flipped today, and 85% of R&D in Canada is being done by private industry outside of the the reach of what government is doing in their own labs. So what that means is that through a program like this, through IDEaS, Canada is attempting to make sure that we're able to benefit from the innovation that's going on outside of our own backyard, and the amazing work that's being done by Canadian innovators. That we want to make sure our armed forces have access to that and are able to benefit from those amazing innovations that are going on in Canadian private sector. It comes out of this sort of branch of the military, the S&T, the Science and Technology branch. The idea is that the operational hazards going on out there in the field are moving at a much faster rate than our typical procurement process can keep up with. I don't know how many of the participants on the phone today have ever bid on a government process before or been through any sort of a government procurement opportunity. But 4 months would probably be a very quick procurement process. If you imagine, our armed forces out in the field, needing to respond to emergent threats, needing to be able to respond to situations that are going on for them out there in the field. They can't wait 6 months or a year to be able to have a new solution. They need to make sure they're staying on top of it. So this is a program that allows us to iterate quickly, allows us to fail fast and learn quickly, and augment the development that's going on in the Canadian private sector and incorporate it into our own operations. I should say as well, there's a bit of a list here of some of the threats and risks that our armed forces are facing. The kinds of things that are coming through this program, I think it's very easy to assume that the military is only interested in armor and bullets and camouflage. The challenges that we have seen come out through this program extend well beyond what you would assume the military is interested in right away. We've seen challenges around detecting corrosion on ship's hulls, for example. We've seen challenges around dealing with the PTSD crisis that our veterans are facing. We've seen challenges around recruitment strategies to try and equalize, the number of minorities or women or any of these sort of groups that are underrepresented in our military. So it really does go beyond guns and ammo, and the kinds of solutions and the kinds of industries that they're looking for solutions from is very, very, very wide-ranging. This program was based on lessons learned from our allies, primarily the UK, the US, and Australia. They all have similar programs. Agile business processes to be able to accept proposals, select, and engage with innovators. We are putting together multidisciplinary teams. We're trying to convene the experts from industry, from academia, from private sector, from within the military as well, trying to make sure we can put those groups all together. We're trying to learn fast through frequent trials, so successful innovators coming through the program are able to trial and test their innovations on real military infrastructure. And just through a recognition that, necessity is the mother of invention, and the hardest problems that are out there tend to attract the best ideas. So, we're really committed to posing our biggest challenges to Canadian innovators, and trusting that the solutions do exist out there. There's a couple of mandates of the program. We're into recruiting innovators, we're into supporting innovation, and we're into developing those products into actual ideas. There's all sorts of different tools that we can use, and you see those tools sort of highlighted in blue. The important thing to remember about this program is that their #1 mandate, they are so laser focused on solving the challenges of our armed forces members. Yes, they are committed to supporting innovation development here in Canada. Yes, they're committed to forming these networks and recruiting innovators to the program. But, while other programs within the Government of Canada have, the mandate of supporting economic development in certain regions, supporting economic development of certain underrepresented groups that show up as very important in the programs, you need to understand that for the military, their #1 laser focus is making sure that they're able to support their armed forces members and get these innovations out in the field. Are there any questions about the program so far? I understand that it's likely, the kind of information that I'm sharing right now is very high level. We're going to get down into the weeds a little bit on how these programs work. But the basic idea is that we are posing challenges to innovators. So within national defense, within our armed forces, they are developing their priorities. They're developing the kinds of challenges that they're faced with, that they struggle with, that they don't have good solutions for currently. And that's really the starting point of all of this. A lot of innovators ask us at the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises how they can make an unsolicited proposal, who they can, they have this brand new innovation, they're looking for a door to knock on within government that they can, talk to about it. For fresh ideas, for unsolicited proposals, unless you are able to convince someone within the military that your solution can solve a challenge that they have and get them to then roll that challenge into the program, this is not an unsolicited proposal program. It needs to start with the challenge coming from the military. So first of all, they develop those challenges, they put them through some ideation processes. They want to really drill down on what the issue actually is, what the potential solutions might be, try and connect it with other parts of the military that might be focused on the same sort of challenge or dealing with similar challenges. And then they get to the point where they can go public with it. Then they pose that challenge out to innovators, and they do that through one of the 5 tools that you see in the middle there. They do it through a competitive project, a contest, innovation networks, sandboxes, or assessment and implementation. The nitty-gritty of each of those different tools is probably not very important at this point. I think it's much more, what's much more relevant is the individual challenge that will relate to your business. So the thing that you want to do as an innovator here is to go onto their website, check out the challenges that are currently being posed, and sign up for the notification, sign up for their mailing list so that you see new challenges when they're posed. And what you've got to do is be patient for the right challenge that may fit your innovation or what you're working on. Just really briefly on the different kinds of tools that are out there. Competitive projects is sort of the classic challenge-based program. So we issue a challenge. We want to better manage the PTSD of our veterans and soldiers. So it's a very broad challenge. There's lots of different ways that innovators could attack that. Lots of different solutions which might be promising. So there's a gate to the competitive project. So the first stage of competitive projects, we might accept the proposals of 5 or 10 or maybe even 20 different applicants, award them each, $100,000, $150,000 to develop their idea into a working prototype. We ask them to come back 6 months later and demo that prototype for us, and then potentially 1 or 2 of the most promising solutions are then awarded a contract to actually deploy and test that in real operational settings. So we want to support the development of many companies, see where you can get to, and then those ideas which get to a promising stage then get sort of sucked in and incorporated into Armed Forces testing. Contests, you might be familiar with maybe the X Prize down in the States, or the Google prizes for driving an unmanned vehicle from LA out into the desert or whatever it was. But there's just basically a set of criteria, and there's a prize available for any innovator who is able to meet those criteria, who is able to develop something along the way. So that's not a contract, it's more of a grant or contribution, just some prize money that's available to innovators who can reach a certain milestone. Innovation networks, there's money available to support bringing different innovators together. It's very much like mobility and integrators, but there's money available in the innovation networks. We're trying to convene academia with private sector and industry leaders, nonprofits, people within government, whoever we need to put together in the same room, basically, or same virtual room, to learn from each other and develop innovations further along. Sandboxes are really neat. That's where we invite companies to come and demo their mature technology, their ready to go prototypes, and test them on currently held defense assets. So there's a sandbox that just closed last weekend around the corrosion detection systems. So the idea is currently the Navy, in order to assess the amount of corrosion that is happening on their ships, they need to pull them out of the water, they need to put them in dry dock, and start pulling panels off and physically looking behind panels to determine how much corrosion is taking place and what the maintenance schedule for the ship is going to be moving forward. I'm sure you can understand how labor intensive and expensive that is, not only to pull the ship out of the water and do all that work, but also removing that ship from operation is costly for our armed forces. So what we're looking for is some sort of an innovative solution to be able to detect the amount of corrosion, or at least a proxy of the kind of corrosion that's going on inside that ship, inside the pipes, within the hull, behind panels, without having to pull the boat out of the water and remove it from service. So a number of innovators have applied, and the promising submissions, those companies are going to be invited to a shipyard at Halifax. There's a boat in the water there, and we're going to actually use their cameras or their drones or whatever it is that they have, and fly them around the ship and basically assess how accurate their assessments of the corrosion that's occurring on that ship are. And the winner can then move to a contract phase through assessment and implementation. There was another sandbox last fall that I thought was really neat. One of the biggest challenges for our armed forces is drones. You're out in a hot zone, you're out in a real operational environment, and you don't even have live combatants that you're dealing with. They are just flying drones into your areas and detonating explosives using these unmanned aerial vehicles. So you can appreciate combating these drones is a huge challenge out in the field. Fairly mature industry. We understand solutions like that already exist out there in the marketplace, at least at the prototype stage. So we invited a number of companies to a base in Alberta, set them all up in a field, and flew drones at them for an hour and saw how many they were able to not only detect but also knock out of the sky. And there was an award there to the solution that came out on top, and that's being moved out into the field right now. Assessment and implementation is really for the late stage innovations that have come through one of these tools already. Idea being military has lots of money, lots of capability to be able to contract for the promising solutions that do make it through one of these other tools. The point is, there's a bunch of different tools. They have a bunch of different ways of awarding cash, of awarding contracts, of supporting innovation and getting the innovations from a drawing on a napkin all the way to being deployed out in the field. Probably the nitty-gritty of each of those tools won't matter to you until you actually see a challenge which you might be able to apply to. So at that point, please contact us. We're more than happy to talk through the actual nitty-gritty of any of these tools that's being used for your industry. But the military is going to choose the right tool for the right industry, for the right innovation, and sort of what level along the development cycle it is. So yeah, so innovation and assessment and implementation, these are for solutions that are very far along the TRL scale or the technological readiness level scale. They're in final development and they're ready to be used and submitted to actually go out and be used in the field. We're going to have some of these coming out in early 2020. Sandboxes, like I was saying, this is a curated trial opportunities for innovators to receive feedback on their solution. They can see how it actually works with real live assets. So yeah, so we had the call for proposal around counter unmanned aerial vehicles in Suffield. The corrosion on ships should occur in June 2020, I believe, and there's going to be more sandboxes released this year. Innovation networks, this is where we're trying to build capacity by bringing groups together. I believe a number of our two big universities here in Vancouver have both been successful in the advanced materials and are convening networks themselves. And the human-machine interface, that's just very cool stuff. That's you know, the matrix, plugging your brain into machines to be able to respond and trust you know, the decisions that machines are making on their own. Contests are like I was saying, like the X Prize down in the States or the Google Prize. There's money awarded for completing a certain task. The contest that is currently going on right now is around a pop-up city. So the military wants to be able to deploy a pop-up camp of up to 1,500 soldiers, 1,500 members. They figure if they can do it in the Arctic, they can do it anywhere. And they're looking for an integrated energy, water, and waste management system for that deployed camp. So there's 4 rounds of development. They've just completed the evaluation of round 1 and are moving into round 2. So I believe there's going to be a lot of integrating here to bring together energy companies and water companies and waste management companies to bring them together and create an integrated solution for our deployed camps. Competitive projects, so these are actual contracts that are being awarded to contribute funding to the development of solutions. There were 16 challenges in April of 2018. This is the most heavily used tool. There are contracts issued just about every 3 months. And there's lots of results of the kinds of cool work that Canadian Innovators have provided already available on the IDEaS webpage. Just some examples of the kinds of challenges that are out there and how sort of wide-ranging they are. Yeah, our space capabilities, you know, detecting and deorbiting space debris was one of the challenges. That's super cool. How can operators trust and work effectively with autonomous systems? So, you know, if we're, you know, if we've got systems that can tell us whether, you know, a certain aircraft is friendly or not, you know, are we able to trust the information that's being given to us from those autonomous systems? Persistent maritime surveillance is a huge issue for Canada. Obviously, we have a lot of coastline. Yeah, other space-based capabilities. But again, it goes beyond these sort of huge billion-dollar ideas, you know, down to just, you know, our HR issues, what we're dealing with there. Yeah, this slide is just sort of showing the kinds of benefits to innovators aside from the money that is available through either contests or contracts. Building the capacity within your company and within the Canadian innovation space is a huge goal of ours, something we're working on. We want to incentivize these competitions to try and bring out the best research solutions, and it can provide validation for your work as well. So the opportunity to be able to test your innovations on our live assets is very valuable as you seek to commercialize and find other customers. Again, just some examples of the kinds of challenges that we're looking for solutions around. AI to help us, combat unmanned air vehicles, to improve our sensor arrays, all our command and control solutions, lots of different things like that. Some results in terms of the competitive projects that have happened so far. They've been well responded to. 634 proposals from 16 challenges. That means more than 160 contracts being issued to 110 different organizations. So that is up to $200,000 each of those contracts for up to 6 months. And the second call was very successful as well. We received lots of proposals and were able to award contracts. The really impressive thing, I know it probably doesn't mean much outside of government, but how quickly they've been able to move these. This program is not even 2 years old yet, and to have already awarded more than 200 contracts in less than 2 years is lightning speed in government language. So yeah, just again, evidence that they are fully committed to solving the challenges of their forces members, and that they can move a little quicker and not necessarily bound by all the same barriers that typical public service procurement can be bound by. Just showing again that the contracts awarded are spread out through the different challenges that were awarded and spread out across the country. So it's not just Ottawa-based companies. It's not just the big boys who are winning all of these contracts so far. Across the country, even up in the north, and on every challenge. So how do you actually apply? What do you need to be in order to make use of the program? Funding eligibility really is very, very broad. It's not just limited to for-profit companies. Educational institutions, I know SFU and UBC here have won a couple challenges and are putting things together. Not-for-profit organizations or associations. So I could imagine even Women's Enterprise Center putting together a single application that brings together different companies within Women's Enterprise Center would be kind of a neat thing to see. Different levels of government other than the federal government are eligible to apply. For-profit companies, of course, individuals as well. If you're just a sole proprietor or doing work in your garage, innovating, you're an engineer on your own, putting stuff together, and you got a great idea and drawing on a napkin. A lot of what we're looking for in this program is very, very early stage. International collaborators as well, as long as you have an eligible Canadian recipient to sort of make the application on behalf of the international collaboration, or any group composed of any of the above. Basically, anyone is eligible to apply to IDEaS other than me, other than someone within the federal government currently, an employee of the federal government, because we have our own avenues for contributing to innovation within the military. We get a lot of questions about intellectual property with respect to this program. The standard Government of Canada contract condition is that you will own your IP. We're not interested in any sort of stake in the IP. We're not interested in any sort of ownership. We want you to be able to benefit from the IP and continue to commercialize and grow your business here in Canada. But the Crown does retain a perpetual license to use and use for our own purposes the innovation or the steps that we took to get to that innovation. We just can't exploit it commercially. It's the full benefit of that IP with respect to commercial application remains with you, the innovator. Are there any questions about IP? There typically are. Happy to chat about it offline afterwards as well.
Yeah, just a reminder to everybody, you can put those questions in the Q&A or the chat. You can see both of those. So as we're going along, if you want to pop those in there, we can address them as we go. But so far, so good, Aaron. This is great information.
Right on. Yeah, I can't see the chat just for the way my computer is set up right now, so that's why I keep asking.
Great.
But yeah, feel free to interrupt me, Carolee, if you do see a question come in.
I will. And just, there is one question over here that says, I went through the website. I don't see a mechanism for ad hoc submissions of innovations for you to accumulate a database of, in quotes, availables. Is that something that is available, or is it just when these calls come out?
Yeah, so there is no method to suggest a challenge through IDEaS right now.
Yep.
I'd be happy to sit down with anyone who has something that they think the military would be interested in, and perhaps suggest a contact or put you in touch with somebody directly who might be able to talk about it. The military has lots of freedom to do procurement outside of IDEaS as well. But yeah, there is no way to submit an unsolicited proposal or an ad hoc proposal. Okay. It would be, at that point, it is about networking. It is about finding the right people who are dealing with that challenge, and maybe they don't even know that there is a solution. Maybe they don't even know that there's a better way out there. So yeah, happy to sort of work through that on a one-on-one. But I have to say it's certainly a challenge. There is another program very similar, but for our civilian departments, called Innovative Solutions Canada, or ISC. They have a website as well that is very similar to the IDEaS website. They're posting challenges. They're looking for Canadian innovators. But part of their mandate, more of their mandate, is about supporting Canadian innovation. It is still about solving the challenges that we're facing within the Canadian government, but they aren't so laser focused the way the armed forces guys are, right? There is a button on that website to suggest a challenge. I can tell you that the submissions definitely get read and definitely get distributed, but I have yet to see any challenge specifically come from an ad hoc proposal. They do have suggestions of a testing stream coming in the future that would allow for ad hoc proposals, but that call hasn't been issued yet.
Great. I'm just putting the Innovative Solutions Canada web address in the chat here, and then we can send that out in the email as well.
Beauty. So this is what I was sort of referencing earlier, the solution readiness level scale. It's also sometimes called technical readiness level, so TRL or SRL. I think Innovative Solutions Canada uses TRL and IDEaS uses SRL. They are really the same scale. It's a scale from 1 to 9. Point is, 1 is a drawing on a napkin. You've got a brand new idea, all the way up to 9. You've proven your prototype through a real life trial and real operation. And then, 10, graduating out of the program, is you've commercialized, you've sold it, it's available on your website, and people can find, customers can find it and buy it. Different sort of ranges on this scale are part of the criteria for those different 5 tools, those different procurement tools. So sandbox is, we're looking for something that is higher up the SRL scale. We're looking for something that you've already validated in a simulated environment. You got to actually have a real solution for knocking down a real drone that we're going to fly at you. You've got to have a prototype that you can fly around a ship and detect corrosion levels on it. It's no longer something just on a napkin or in your CAD system or something like that. You actually have a real prototype. So that you know, when the industry is in that stage, we can use a sandbox for a higher level SRL innovation versus those competitive projects. We're looking for something in the 1 to 4 range. We're looking for something that we can contribute to the development of and help you get to the next stage where we can actually test it in a real operational environment. So, you know, again, you know, you might be working on your specific innovation and you know exactly where on the scale you might fall, and you might be getting worried that, oh, well, I'm not going to be eligible for the sandbox when it comes out. Again, yeah, I would just say, don't worry about the individual nitty-gritty of each of those policy tools until you see the challenge come out. So this is just review of the elements. Again, competitive projects, innovation networks, and contests all have money attached to them through either contracting or grants and contributions. Same with sandboxes and IDEaS and assessment and implementation. And then these 3 here have less money attached to them, not through contracts, but just through grants and contributions. Where we're trying to connect innovators, we're trying to develop the ideas into something that innovators can work with. And mobility is only money for travel, you know, where maybe there's an expert in 3D printing of this specific advanced material out in Toronto, and we got to get him here talking to the integrated network we've set up at SFU. So, you know, we need a little money to bring him out or bring his materials over or bring some equipment out or whatever it is. But to allow for that mobility, there's money available there as well. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk less about the IDEaS program specifically and more about just in general how to create a bid with the government of Canada. This can apply. Yes, absolutely, it'll apply if you want to you know, make a submission to the IDEaS program, but it'll apply to any government contracting opportunity you're looking at. This content was all developed for just our standard buy and sell bid submission process. Before I get into this though, are there any questions about those IDEaS tools specifically?
I'm not seeing anything so far in the chat and Q&A. We have one in the Q&A, but it looks like that's the next step that you're going into. So I think we're good to keep going.
I just needed a break to rest my voice anyway, so that's
perfect. Perfect.
So like I was saying, my department, PSPC, we're the main procurement arm of the federal government. We're really the main business arm of the federal government. We do any sort of common business function on behalf of all those other government departments. Everything we do is about being open, fair, and transparent in procurement. I know it's often frustrating for businesses to work with the government. We can take a long time to answer our phone. We can take a long time to reply to emails. We speak in our government acronyms and our government language, and you know, we can't just give straight answers half the time. And I know how frustrating that is. But typically when we're doing those things, it's not because we're trying to frustrate you. It's not because we're trying to make the process inefficient or expensive for you. It's because we're doing something with respect to openness, fairness, or transparency. So even just, you know, what may seem like a simple answer to one of your questions, you will answer directly, that would give you potentially an unfair advantage in the bidding process because you would have information that not other potential suppliers would have. So when you do phone up one of our contracting officers, they're going to tell you that they need the question in writing. You're going to have to then go back and write it out and submit it to them in email, and they aren't even going to answer you. What they're going to do instead is write out an answer, have it approved, have it translated into English and French, and then they're going to post the answer for everybody to access. So I understand why that process is maybe not what you're used to in a typical business-to-business relationship. I understand why it can be frustrating, but just I hope that you can understand from our side of the coin why we have to do it that way. There's a lot of federal laws and regulations, Treasury Board policies, our own procurement process, all our free trade agreements that we're signatory to. that make this whole environment very complicated and ensure that there's a lot of responsibilities to keep our people busy. No matter what opportunity you're approaching, whether or not it's the IDEaS program or Innovative Solutions Canada or just a tender that you found on buyindsell.gc.ca, it's important that, of course, you review the solicitation document completely. Make sure you're reading everything that's there. I'd say that that's, that might not necessarily be the first thing you want to do, especially if you're a small business. Just reading through one of our 60-page RFPs or, making it through that into all the different, eligibility criteria for all the different tools in the IDEaS program, for example. There's a lot there. If it's just you and a partner or under 10 employees, that's significant amounts of time that we're asking for you to put in just to decide if this is an opportunity that you want to chase. There's a lot of suggestions that we have and a lot of work we can do. If you just sit down with me or one of my colleagues here in OSME for an hour, I think we can save a lot of time in that process. Just getting you to that decision point as quickly as we can of whether or not this is a good opportunity for you to bid on. If you are looking through any of those tenders, if there's any uncertainty, reach out to us at OSME. We're happy to help clear things up. But if it's a specific technical question with respect to the tender that's out there on the street, you must submit your questions in writing to the contracting authority. And be aware that sometimes deadlines for questions exist that are earlier than the deadline for the closing of the whole bid opportunity. And yeah, this is just saying what I was sort of speaking about on the last slide. They're not going to answer you directly. They're going to amend the entire tender notice to provide the answers to those questions so that all suppliers have access to the same information. So these are the kinds of questions you want to be asking yourself when you're approaching any of the tenders, whether or not it's IDEaS or not. I think the IDEaS website does a great job of laying out what the challenge is in plain language. So it's very easy for you to go and see the challenge, see the kind of end state, the end goal that the Government of Canada is trying to get to, and understand whether or not your company is going to be able to help us get there. It's a little more complicated on buy and sell. There tends to be, 6 parts of different legal obligations that you're reading through before you ever even get to the statement of work. I always suggest to companies when you're first approaching a tender, start in Annex A, ignore that other stuff until you're able to go through Annex A and ask yourself these 5 questions here. Is this actual work that you're interested in doing? Are you going to be able to meet the terms and conditions, delivery dates, the pricing method? Do you have the capacity within your own business here, or do you need to partner with somebody else to be able to deliver all of this? IDEaS has a lot of space to create collaboration and work with a university or a research partner or development lab or an accelerator or not-for-profit like Women's Enterprise Center, whatever it might be. But yeah, making sure that you're asking yourself these questions, knowing who else you might bid. I saw a great presentation yesterday from a woman who advises companies on procurement. And talks about creating for companies a full risk matrix where you want to, what is the probability that I'm going to win this tender, and how much work do I want to devote based on how likely it is that I have a chance of winning. And the more competitors there are in the space, obviously, that decreases your chance of winning. So making sure you take all that sort of stuff into account when you're deciding whether or not to bid. When you're preparing your bid, make sure that you're following the format that we ask for. On the IDEaS program, it's actually quite straightforward. They give you an online form to fill out. And at the initial stage, what they're asking for is like a 500-word description of what it is you're doing and how you can meet the development goals that Canada is posing. So it's important that you address each item in accordance with the evaluation criteria. So, they're going to put out things like, hey, with the corrosion detection, we want to be able to do this without having to pull the ship out of the water. We want to be able to detect whether or not, get an idea of how much rusting is occurring within the hull without having to remove a panel. They've been very specific about that. If your solution involves removing panels, that doesn't meet the criteria that they're talking about. Even if it is far superior in a lot of other ways, if you don't address the criteria exactly as they've laid them out, it's going to be hard for the evaluators to be able to pass you through to the next stage. We often ask that your bid is submitted in different sections. Almost always a technical section separate from a financial section. We do often ask for those other sections as well, but the technical is always going to be different from the financial section. The reason we do that is we don't want ideas about your price influencing our assessment of your technical merit at all. So in fact, the people who evaluate your price are not the same people that evaluate the technical merits of your bid, so we want them in separate sections. Yeah, and just, as you're going through it, making sure that you're in plain language. Our evaluators are typically not experts in your industry. They are contracting experts. So, if you're using jargon or acronyms, make sure that you're explaining it the first time you use it. But yeah, speaking back to us about our objectives and the reasons and benefits for carrying it out as you're proposing it. Ways to meet those objectives is very key. We often want to hear about your work plan, methodology, and techniques that you're proposing. I think this next point is very, very, very important, especially in service contracts. We want to know about the risks. We want to know that you know about the risks and that you have a plan and strategies in place to be able to mitigate those risks and make sure they're not going to apply to the project that you're looking at. I've seen people lose points for just ignoring risk altogether, or assuming that we understand things about your innovation that remove those risks. It's always better to address them and tell us why your solution or why those risks no longer apply because of your innovation. Yeah, and just making sure you're responding to all the requirements. Even in the IDEaS program, where it's a simplified application, they do have a very clear list of requirements that they're trying to achieve, and making sure that your solution is able to speak to all of those requirements is very important. You want to make it very easy for the evaluator, right? They've got their evaluation matrix. They've just got a grid of, criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that they're going through. Structuring your bid in the same order, for example, is something you can do to make it very easy for the evaluator to go through. Using the same headings, the same numbering system. Great strategies to make it really easy on the evaluator. And yeah, remember that each bid is evaluated solely on its content. So you can't rely on any past conversations that you've had with me or with the evaluators that we're going to remember those things. In fact, we're not allowed to incorporate any of that sort of past knowledge or go to your website to seek clarification. When you submit your bid, make sure you know when and where it's due. Again, even with the IDEaS program, it'll be a submission online through their portal, but you got to make sure it's in on time, in full. Our websites aren't the super modern websites that you might expect and see from other levels of government or from other organizations. So silly things like just not hitting the save button on every page before you move on to the next section. I've seen that result in bids being disqualified. So making sure making sure all the information is in there. Sign everything. Ensure your proposal is following the requested format. And this last point I think is huge and a very good point to keep in mind for businesses, especially small businesses, is to have somebody else review your bid against those same criteria. If they can follow along and see how each part of the tender is being addressed by your bid, then you can rest easy that that an evaluator would be able to follow along as well. I think you should really have a good idea when you're submitting a bid of the score you're going to get. If there's a point rated score and they've provided you with the criteria and their marking rubric, you know, there should be no surprises at the end of it about what score you actually wind up on. Yeah, you know, you have no way of knowing what price your competitors are coming in at, or if they're able to beat you on those technical merit items, but really think you should have a good idea where you're going to fall.
Aaron, I want to jump in with a quick question there around the amendments.
Yeah.
Because I think we spoke about this on one of our other sessions, but once you've inquired, is there a way to receive those automatic updates if you're interested in a particular bid? How do you make sure that you receive those notifications?
Absolutely. So on the buy and sell website, you'll see it on a lot of different pages. You'll see it on the search results pages, and you'll also see it on any individual tender. There's these three icons: RSS. I forget what the acronym of the second one is. And the newest one is just a little black envelope with an @ symbol in it. So it's a little email icon.
Great.
You click on that. You can subscribe to updates either to a specific tender. So say you're working on a bid for a specific opportunity that's out there, and you want to make sure you're up to date on you know, anybody else asking questions. Any amendments posted to that tender, you'll get a notification if you subscribe there. You can also do it with search results. So say, you know, you're in the business of video production and you find the GSIN code for your, you know, for that specifically, and you want to know anytime a new tender notice comes out under that code, you can set up your filters, set up your search, and then click that notification button as well. And anytime, you know, there's any change to those search criteria, you'll get a notification as well. I can do it. I don't know that we have a ton of time left. I cover this I cover this more in more detail in our Doing Business with the Government of Canada seminar. You can find that on the event calendar on buyandsell.gc.ca. We do those by webinar as well.
Yeah, and I think we have a recording of one of those, so I'll send that link out in this following email as well. Yeah.
Right on.
Yep.
Okay. Submitting your bid. We've started accepting bids electronically now, which is great. Welcome to the 20th century, Canada. I don't have to talk about fax anymore. That's amazing. We use this ePost Connect service. The only thing I'll say about that really is, so it's a service through Canada Post that allows you to encrypt your email. So, you know, you open a conversation with the bid receiving unit and you can send your documents securely. You can be sure that what we receive is exactly what you send. It hasn't been intercepted along the way. It's green. We don't, you know, need to reduce printing, reduce paper. The only thing I'll say about it is to make sure you go to the website and register for ePost Connect early. It does require sort of a confirmation step to confirm your account and create your account. And if you're up against the deadline for a bid submission, you don't want to be waiting for Canada Post to confirm your account. So make sure you do that a little early. I know this is a national webinar, I think, so you may be watching from elsewhere in the country. My office is here in Vancouver. I got colleagues out in Victoria as well, and we serve BC and the Yukon. But so we're the Pacific region down there in the bottom right, but I have colleagues in every region across the country as well as a national info line, the 1-800 number right up at the top there. So if you're in one of those other regions, if you're interested in chatting with me, I'm still more than happy to talk with you online. But if you want to meet face to face with one of my counterparts in your region, there's their contact info. And if you want to reach out to the Defense, the IDEaS program specifically, follow them on Twitter. They don't have their own Twitter account, but they do tweet out using that hashtag Defense IDEaS, all the new opportunities from just their typical armed forces account. And you know, that question about an ad hoc proposal that was earlier, that was posed earlier, this is the portal that you might want to reach out to as well, just to you know, either introduce yourself, suggest your challenge. I can't say that, you know, you're going to be successful at getting a challenge posted right away here, but they do monitor that inbox, and they, you know, at best, they could connect you with someone in the military who, you know, is dealing with that challenge or could benefit from your solution that can start your sort of networking journey. Yeah, so just looking at the time, I see we're just about at the hour. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with me. There's our Pacific Region contact information down the bottom as well. I think, Carolee, you can share my direct number and email address as well with all the attendees.
Yep.
So yeah, more than happy to chat in more detail. I know the IDEaS program in general is pretty hard to wrap your head around until you actually, you know, you want to talk about your innovation, you want to talk about your idea, what might be the right avenue. So more than happy to do that if anybody wants to reach out.
That's great. Perfect. Lots of very valuable information there, Aaron, for sure. I'm just going to leave that slide up. So if anybody wants to jot down those phone numbers or the web address, and again, this is recorded, so you can also find it on our website, and we'll send out the link. And as I mentioned, we have some of those previous sessions that you've done, Aaron, so we'll send the links to those as well, so people can get a good handle on all of the ways to sell services to the government. So that's great. So thanks again, Aaron. Lots of great, valuable information in there on the IDEaS program. So again, everyone, you'll get the follow-up email with some links and information. Also a quick link to a survey to provide your feedback, and also suggest some other sessions or topics that you want us to cover to support you as you're growing your business. And again, coming up on March 26th, we have another webinar working with the federal government as well on Indigenous Services Canada. So it's all around procurement strategies for Aboriginal businesses program. So watch for a reminder about that as well. So that's another great way to get registered and sell your services to the government. So we're right on time. So again, thank you very much, Aaron, for another very informative session. Thank you to everyone for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you back here again soon on another one of our sessions.
Thanks very much, Carolee. Well, it was fun.
Great. Have a good day, everyone. And thank you very much for joining us.
So long.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.